Hey everyone, this is Eric Sloof at the VMware booth. It's VMworld 2018 and I'm joined by the one and only Brian Madden. Brian, how are you?
I am very well, thank you.
Okay, so Brian, 15 years ago you started with VDI, I think, with Citrix. You were the Citrix guru back then. I know that you also hosted your own website, brianmadden.com. And yeah.
That's correct. It was not called VDI back then, so a lot of us old timers know Citrix application and desktop remoting was a thing. Before that, I actually was involved with desktop management, SCCM, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I've been doing this a long time.
Yeah, right. So over time, you sold your website to TechTarget, and I think your brother is still posting articles there.
That's correct. A lot of people don't know it. The brianmadden.com, the website, and the Briforum conference I created, those I actually sold in 2008, so 10 years ago. I actually worked for TechTarget for 3 years. I loved it there. I've renewed for 5 more years. That got us till 2016. 2016, I kind of backed away from the industry. I didn't know what I wanted to do next. My brother, who is a different person than me, by the way, Jack Madden is a real human. It's not me with glasses. Still writes on brianmadden.com. Yeah. He's the executive editor there. I took some time off, and then earlier this year joined VMware. So now I read brianmadden.com every day, and you should read brianmadden.com every day. But I don't actually work there because I work at a vendor now, so brianmadden.com is independent.
So after cycling through the country for a year, you decided to go work for VMware. Are you still teamed up with Gabe Knudsen?
Gabe Knuth, and Gabe Knuth is my best friend from forever. Hey Gabe, he works at FS Logics, which is one of the VMware partner companies that does sort of application containerization, Office 365 containerization. But I talk to him every week.
Okay, that's great to hear. So about your session, is VDI dead? That's a very valid question because for the last 10 years, since somebody installed Windows XP into a virtual machine, people are talking about this is going to be the year of VDI. But what you see these days is that people are using apps and they're not bothering about the desktop anymore. Is that what you're aiming at? Is that more or less what the session is about?
Yes, that's part of it. The other thing the session was about is, now the Windows 10, there's this modern management interface and we can manage Windows machines without domains and GPOs and SCCM and VPNs and all this kind of stuff. And a lot of people have always thought these remoting technologies like VDI are like a Band-Aid, a workaround. And people say, oh, well, hey, if I've got all these other ways to manage Windows machines, it's easy. Can't I just go back to physical Windows machines? The other piece of this, of course, is Windows applications are still important today, but there's all these other application types, web apps, mobile apps, SaaS, cloud. So sometimes people are saying, oh, VDI is only about Windows applications. Oh, those Windows applications are dead anyway, who cares? And they think, again, that VDI is just a temporary Band-Aid solution. And what I was trying to outline in my session is that VDI has certain use cases. Those use cases will evolve over time, but I believe that VDI is about remotely delivering Windows applications. That is always going to be a piece of an overall end-user computing estate now and really for a long, long time in the future.
Right. So another thing, security is a main concern these days, and VMware has also introduced NSX. Are NSX and VDI, are they having a happy marriage?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, NSX and any virtualization workload have a happy marriage, and so VDI is able to benefit from NSX as much as anything. In fact, it might be even a little bit more advantageous because VDI is different than your typical workload in that VDI, this is a user interacting interactively with a GUI running in your data center. This is like inviting a criminal into your house, but still trying to lock it down. And say, don't go there, please do not break my children. So NSX, you could argue, is almost even more important in a VDI type environment. Of course, security is something that involves, there's multiple fronts and multiple ways of doing security. So as I said, VDI is just one way of delivering end user computing today. NSX works very well for helping to secure VDI environments. But everything that we're doing with VMware Workspace ONE, we're also delivering physical Windows applications, physical Mac applications, iOS iOS, Android, web applications, brokering those. And security is woven throughout all of these things, and certainly we are able to secure sort of random end user devices very well these days. You don't need VDI just to get good security in 2018.
Right. And if we look at VDI and the different applications that are hosted by, for instance, a Windows machine, we see that some customers have very graphical high demand applications, and we can partially solve that with offloading some of the graphics to a dedicated graphic card. Do you see new techniques helping the adoption of VDI in that space?
Oh, absolutely. And because every desktop computer, every laptop computer sold in the past 10 years has a GPU in it. So it's kind of ridiculous to think that if you are going to create a corporate workload that's running Windows and deliver it with VDI, it's kind of crazy to try to do that without a GPU. Certainly there are some more simple applications that are able to function, but a GPU is just assumed that exists in Windows, and it has to exist in all forms of Windows, including VDI. Now that said, what a lot of people don't understand is a GPU on a VDI host, it is not just about high-intensive graphical applications. In fact, with VMware Horizon using the BLAST protocol, when you have a GPU in that host, it actually offloads the encoding of the BLAST protocol into the GPU, which not only frees up CPU resources, which typically are your scalability limit on a host, but also cuts 80 milliseconds out of the rendering pipeline. A lot of people think about network round trip and they only look at how much latency is in the network. They forget that from the time the application generates some screen content to change until the time that moves through the compression and encoding and rendering pipeline to be packaged into the packet on the wire and go out the back of that server, there's a lot of processing that happens there too. Adding a GPU can cut 80 milliseconds out of that cycle. And when you look at latency times, everyone wants to know how much latency is too much for VDI, and it depends on a lot of factors, but a lot of people are saying, well, 250 milliseconds, you have to start to really test and be careful. 80 milliseconds is a big chunk. And so forget for a moment the high graphics applications, which as I said are very valid. If I told you I could give you 80 milliseconds back with just adding this card into a server, give you 80 milliseconds back your latency, it's a game changer. And I think that's why we're seeing a lot of graphics, whether it's the Intel, NVIDIA, or AMD, we're seeing a lot of graphics used now in VDI environments.
Right. Talking about performance and latencies, in the past, VDI was suffering from storage performance problems because they have scaled their storage based on the number of desktops, and suddenly they go over that number and the storage isn't able to keep up with all the IOPS. What we see these days with vSAN and VDI, I think that's a good combination, because when you add a host to the cluster, you're not only introducing CPU and memory, but also capacity and IOPS. And with the NVRAM solutions these days, do you see an improvement for VDI solutions?
I do, absolutely, and to me, it's not so much of a technology problem. I don't think that storage was ever a problem for VDI. I think that money was a problem for VDI. Yeah. We were always able, Windows wants the IOPS that it wants, and you have a desktop computer with SSD and 150 IOPS. Well, if you put that same desktop instance to VDI and give it 10 IOPS, surprise, it's going to suck. This has nothing to do with storage, right? We always had the ability to build storage to support 150 IOPS per user. It's just that 10 years ago, when you looked at the price tag, it was not usable, and then you got into managers and financial people saying, well, do you really need 150 IOPS? How about 10? What we see now is the technology improvements like the NVRAM stuff, vSAN, look at Horizon Instant Clones, and the VM fork technologies. There's a lot of technologies that are allowing us to enable higher IOPS at lower costs, and that therefore then has a direct impact of the VDI and desktop experience. So I really think that storage problem was it was very expensive, and technology over the past 5 years or so has really helped bring that price down. And at the end of the day, if we can give a desktop 150, 200 IOPS, I don't care what storage is underneath it, if we can deliver those IOPS, it's going to be a very nice working desktop.
Right, definitely. I totally agree. So you're in the office of the CTO of End User Computing now. I think one big flagship is Workspace ONE. Is that the place where everything comes together as a last question?
Yes. I was going to say yes, the end. No, it is, and because historically within end user computing, so end user computing is a business unit within VMware, and historically we had what was the Horizon product, that technology, which was the VDI and RDSH remote Windows technology, and we had AirWatch, which was our unified endpoint management technology, primarily for iOS and Android, although more recently Windows and Mac and Chrome, and that included the identity management and all the cloud intelligence and everything. That's all merged together into a single product called VMware Workspace ONE. And the reason we did that, there's lots of reasons for it, but really it's because we realized that none of this stuff is happening in a vacuum. No customer is 100% VDI or 100% virtual desktops or 100% Mac or 100% Windows or 100% iOS or Android. It makes sense to build one platform that can support all device types, all user types, all authentication types, web applications, and everything. So that's what Workspace ONE is. We don't call it a product, it's a platform. It's pluggable, it's extensible and extendable. Lots of pieces plug into it, many from VMware, many from other business groups within VMware, many from third-party companies. You look at things we're doing like with Trust Network and things like that. And that is the platform that represents end-user computing at VMware.
Right, great. A good roundup. Many thanks for the interview, and I hope you enjoy the VM world.
Thank you so much, glad to be here, and I'm having a good time.
Thanks, Brian.